Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan selamat sejahtera. Today I am going to share with you about chapter 3, which is selection and speciation. This topic, selection and speciation, is divided into two main subtopics. The first one is selection. The second one is speciation. Under subtopic of selection, we have natural selection that consists of stabilizing selection, disruptive selection, and directional selection. In stabilizing selection, what is the meaning of stabilizing selection? Stabilizing selection is natural selection that favors individual having intermediate phenotypes by acting against both extreme phenotypes. So, as we can see here in the diagram, the intermediate phenotypes are chosen in a population. As an example, in human, newly born babies with intermediate weight at birth have the highest survival rate. While if the weight of the baby is too small, their body system are immature. While if the weight of baby is too heavy, they have difficult deliveries as they cannot pass easily through cervix. Next natural selection is disruptive selection. Okay, the disruptive selection is natural selection that favors individual on both extreme phenotypes by acting against intermediate phenotypes. So we can see this population, the intermediate phenotypes are not chosen, while both extreme phenotypes are chosen in a population. After disruptive selection occurs, it will increase genetic variation. So we choose one example, a big size of African fire-bellied sickraker finch. Only few have intermediate big size. This is because of the presence of seed available are divided into two categories, small and large. Only finches with larger beaks could crack open larger seeds, and small beaks could efficiently eat small seeds. So what happened to the medium big size? They have disadvantage with both seed types. So both extreme phenotypes are chosen in the population. Also, the big size of finches in Galapagos Island. So only if you have intermediate big size. So due to food available. Next, natural selection is directional selection. Directional selection is natural selection that favors individual on one extreme phenotype by acting against individuals on the other extreme. So occurs when environmental conditions gradually change over time or when members of a population inhabit area with extreme condition. So we can see here only one extreme phenotypes are selected in the environment. So another extreme phenotypes are not selected. So this is called as directional selection. So the effects of directional selection, it can reduce genetic variation because of individuals on the other extreme are less likely to survive, while individuals having one of the extreme phenotypes have higher chance to survive and reproduce successfully. Example of peppered moth Biston bitularia. So the phenotype of Biston bitularia, it has light color with few black dots, which is normal form. To dark color is called melanic form. So before Industrial Revolution, light color is more common. because of it can camouflage well on the tree trunks covered with lichen. Air pollution killed the lichen, tree trunks were darkened, so the effects like color mold can be seen easily by predators and were eaten. Dark colored mold has higher chance to survive and reproduce. So the number of dark mold increases. Also, another example about antibiotic resistance bacteria. When exposed to antibiotics, least resistant bacteria die first. Okay, next selection is artificial selection, divided by two, inbreeding and outbreeding. Inbreeding is selective mating between closely related individuals that have similar genotypes for the selected character. So it is a non-random mating. So other example, marriage between relatives, or extreme example, self-fertilization, crossing between individuals from the same parents. So usually practiced by breeders and farmers to produce good breeds of livestock and pets. So the corn and its ancestor inbreeding occur. Maize with large and long cobs is self-fertilized for many generations. Also about wild mustard. So disadvantages about inbreeding, it will decrease genetic variation, the phenotype become less fertile, lower reproduction, more susceptible to disease. Next, artificial selection is outbreeding, is selective mating between unrelated or distantly related individuals that have different genotypes for the selected character. So it will increase heterozygous genotypes and also increase genetic variation. We can see here an example of oil palm that have two varieties, which is Dura that cross with Piscifera. So it will produce a generation of Tenera. So Dura have thin mesocarp, thick shell and low oil content that cross with Piscifera, which is have thick mesocarp, has no shell, unproductive, sometimes female is sterile. So the generation produced Tenera have thick mesocarp, thin shell and high oil content. Okay, this is how Piscifera that is male parent transferred to Dura female flowers. Then produce Tenera variety. As we can see here, parent one has larger diameter but shorter cobs. Another parent has smaller diameter but longer cobs. So hybrid has both larger diameter and longer cobs. We choose the quality of both two parents to produce high quality of hybrid. So as the conclusion of artificial selection, an importance of artificial selection produce higher quality of food. Example, increased fruit size or better meat, produce higher yield of food, earlier maturity, the organism lay more eggs or produce more milk. Animals are bred to do a particular job. Example, race horse or sheepdog or guide dog. Or also we can produce show animals. Next subtopic is speciation. Speciation divided by two, sympatric speciation and allopatric speciation. Sympatric speciation is formation of two or more species from a single ancestral species that occupy the same geographic area or geographically overlapping area. The sympatric occurs due to reproductive barrier. Occurs in at least two ways: a change in ecology and a change in ploidy, the number of chromosome sets. A population is within same geographic area from two or more subpopulations. So the gene flow is interrupted between subpopulations. Produce separated gene pool. Different subarea gives different selective pressure. So no random mating due to sexual selection, reproductive barrier occurs, and the last one produce speciation occurs. What is allopatric speciation? Allopatric speciation, formation of two or more species from a single ancestral species that occupy different geographic area. So, may due to the constant change of Earth's surface, rivers shifting directions, or large lakes dry up into few smaller lakes, or mountain range forming. A population separated by a clear geographic barrier and produce two or more subpopulations. Gene flow is interrupted, so each subpopulation has separate gene pool. Different area give different selective pressure. Natural selection selects different character to survive. Frequency of alleles is altered, and isolated population undergo evolution. So, allopatric speciation occur and produce new species. Okay, what factors involved in the formation of new species? We have four factors that involve in the formation of new species. The first one is reproductive isolation. Reproductive isolation, we can relate with the subtopic sympatric speciation. Reproductive isolation divided by two, pre-zygotic barrier and post-zygotic barrier. They have five pre-zygotic barrier, which is habitat isolation, temporal isolation, behavioral isolation, mechanical isolation, and the last one is gametic isolation. While for post-zygotic barrier, we have three factors, three effects. The first one, hybrid inviability. Next, hybrid infertility. And the last one is hybrid breakdown. Reproductive isolation. Isolation that for pre-zygotic barrier prevent the organism from mating. So, the first one, habitat isolation, temporal isolation, behavioral isolation. If mating occur, it will have an isolation that is called mechanical isolation or gametic isolation. But if fertilization occurs, so the hybrid may be produce hybrid inviability, or the hybrid is infertility, or the hybrid is breakdown. The first one, Habitat isolation. The species live and breed in different habitat in the same geographic area, or different species adapted to different habitat. Rarely meet with each other, even though they are not isolated by obvious physical barriers. Okay, look at the diagram. The frogs on the land, while another frogs in the river. Different habitat. Okay. Also, two species of garter snakes. One lives mainly in water, another lives mainly on land. So they cannot interbreed. Next example, two species of parasites living on different hosts. So both species cannot interbreed because of different habitat. Okay, next factor is temporal isolation. So two species reproduce at different times of the day, season or year, or breeding period occur at different time of season. So let's look the first example, spotted skunk. Eastern spotted skunk mates in late winter, while western spotted skunks mates in late summer. So if both spotted skunks meet, they cannot interbreed because of different different time of reproductive time, different time to reproduce. So the other example about fruit flies. Drosophila pessimilis sexually active in the morning, while Drosophila pseudoobscura sexually active in the afternoon. So they cannot mating. Another example, an orchid in rainforest flower on different days. Pollination is limited in one day. Another flower open in the morning, while another flower open in evening. So, because of different times of reproduction time, they cannot mating. Next factor is behavior isolation, different in courtship pattern in different species. Examples, the types of bird singing or frogs vocalization. Another example about a behavioral isolation, fireflies. Male fireflies signal to females by blinking their lights in a specific rhythm. So the female respond only to the signals of their own species. Different rhythms for different species. Another example, cichlid family in Lake Victoria in Africa. So Pundamilia male is blue-black, while Pundamilia nyerere male has red color at the back. So under normal light, female of each species only mated with male of the same species. But if under orange light, both males appear identical in color. Females mated with males of both species, and mate choice by females are based on the color. Next factor is mechanical isolation. In animals, incompatible structure of reproductive organ that prevents successful mating between species. Example, snails which has spiral in different direction. So, you can look at the comic. Because of mechanical isolation, the reproductive organ incompatible, so they prevent successful mating. In plants, flowers are pollinated by different animals or different in structure of flower. Large bees cannot land on the black flowers. Small bees can land on the white flowers, but their bodies do not brush against stamens. Gametic isolation is male gametes of a species cannot fuse with the female gametes of another species. Due to inability of the sperms to survive in the female reproductive tract of another species, or maybe due to surface of the egg contains specific protein that bind only two complementary molecules on the same surface of sperm cells of the same species. Example, red and purple sea urchin in aquatic animals that reproduce by external fertilization. Ovum and sperms are released by many species at the same time. So gametes are chemically incompatible that prevent fertilization. So the factors that prevent the hybrid zygote from developing into a viable and fertile adult. They have three types of isolation: hybrid inviability, hybrid infertility, and hybrid breakdown. Hybrid inviability. Fertilization occurs to form hybrid zygotes, but it fails to develop to maturity. Hybrid inviability. Hybrid between them produce defective embryos in the lab. Hybrid infertility. Hybrids fail to produce functional gametes. Hybrid cannot produce gamete because they obtain two sets of non-homologous chromosomes. So meiosis cannot occur, gamete cannot be produced, and prevent gene flow. Example, tiger crossed with lion. It can produce F1 hybrids that fail to produce functional gametes. Maybe it produces hybrid of liger if the male parent is lion, or it produces a tigon if a male parent is tiger. Also, female horse crossed with male donkey, it will produce mule. Infertility hybrid. So hybrid breakdown, F1 hybrids are viable and fertile. Next factor is hybridization or allopolyploidy involves sexual reproduction between individuals from closely related species. Hybrids are sterile but can undergo chromosomal mutation. Speciation occurs because it produces a new F1 hybrid. Next factor is genetic drift, consists of founder effect and bottleneck effect. What is founder effect? A few individuals migrate to colonize a new isolated location. These founders represent a different gene pool from the origin population. So founder effect reduces variation in population. It can change the frequencies of alleles in a new population. So changes in the frequencies of alleles, we call it as founder effect. The second one is bottleneck effect. Occurs when the population suddenly reduces in size or reduce drastically in the population size due to natural disaster. Example, earthquake, drought, fire, or flood. So changing in the frequencies of alleles in a new population we call as bottleneck effect. Original population so undergoes natural disaster, drastic reduction, small amount of individuals survive. The surviving individuals produce next generation. So the allele frequencies of the next generation is not same as the parent population. But the frequencies of alleles and genotypes in a population remain constant from one generation to the next under certain conditions. The first one is large population size or random mating and fertilization occur if the population has no natural selection or no migration and also no mutation. The assumption of Hardy-Weinberg law, all individuals in a population are equally fertile and has the same ability to survive and produce fertile offspring. But in real life, due to the variation, it is never equal. And the last one, the last factors involved in the formation of new species is adaptive radiation. Adaptive radiation, formation of many new species from one common ancestral. This process occurs when a population invades a variety of new habitats and evolves in response to different environmental pressures in those habitats. Example, Darwin finches in Galapagos Islands. 14 species of finch evolved from a single ancestral. The common ancestor comes from South American mainland. So in Galapagos Island, it have different species due to different beak shape and size. So finches, natural selection occurs in each habitat. Finches are adapted to their environment. Each group changes their gene pool. The last one produce many species originate from one common ancestor. Okay, you can refer the references in these books. And that's all. Thank you.